Would you all rise and say the Pledge of Allegiance? I'm going to ask Wes Cashwell to say it for us tonight.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Join me in a moment of silence, please. Thank you.
We will begin tonight's meeting.
Pleasant Garden has 4,700 people, 15 square miles, and their poverty rate is 8%. Stokesdale has around 5,300 people, 19 square miles, and their poverty rate is like Oak Ridge at 3%. Oak Ridge is 6,700 people, 15 square miles. So I live in Census Tract 1112, about a mile and a half from here. We have 6,000 people, 1 square mile, and our poverty rate is 45%. So the realities for people who live below the federal poverty guidelines in my census tract, 45% of 6,000 people living within 1 square mile is an eternity of experience apart from other people that live other places. If you're poor, it's tough no matter who you are. But when you're poor, living in that kind of hyper intense concentrated poverty, your mobility is almost nil. Need to be open that everybody's reality is centered in, the foundations and the areas in which they live, and that we are going to have some very different perspectives about people's lives. And I am incredibly concerned because we haven't seen the devastation of this pandemic and won't until we all surface again and re-enter our systems. And I do hope that during this time we can think about what a new system would look like, because the old system was not working. It wasn't working for all students, even though some were doing better than others. The United States is faring poorly compared to other countries in the world. So, we can use this time to envision a new system that has the potential to work for all of our students. So, I'm just as concerned about the students that were in school that we have failed for decades, that did not recover from what they didn't receive, what they were entitled to. We'll continue to make the best efforts to strengthen our remote and virtual and the in-person learning that is going on. It is going to be part of our future going forward. Students shouldn't come back to school for the rest of the year. I also want to say that, we have about a little over 71,000 students, and 56% of that student population are Black and Latinx Hispanic students. And here's some information. The board's asked about a lot of data, a lot of information, a lot of context. But here's what's recent. Looking at third grade end of year Dibbles composite scores, there's a 30-point gap between white students and Black students. When we're looking at enrollment in IB and advanced placement, white student enrollment occurs at 2 times the rate of Black and Hispanic students. When we're looking at North Carolina Math 1, math is a life-altering course. There's a 22-point gap in performance. There's not one single indicator of educational experience where Black students are on par with white students, not one. And not a board member has shed a tear, has waged a campaign, has organized people, and stayed the course to do anything about that. I want to say to Dr. Contreras, because I do support her, unequivocally support her. And the time that our kids are going to have in school, whether it's 16 days or 26 days, is critically important, because Black babies begin to struggle the minute they're conceived. Maternal health for Black women is at an all-time crisis right now. Every day, there are stories about well-educated, well-incomed, Gold Star insurance Black women dying in their 20s and in their 30s, not making it out of childbirth. And that's the mothers, because their wombs are so stressed out that they reach the tipping point for delivery before the baby can stay in there 9 months to fully develop. And then we get a lot of those children. And so trying to survive 9 months of incubation is a struggle, and race has everything to do with that. And then there's infant mortality. Black babies in this county are 3 to 4 times greater, their likelihood of dying before their first birthday, the minute they're conceived. And so if they're going to get 26 days of instruction that hopefully will lead to additional months of instruction, it is absolutely worth it to me, because every minute of their life has been a struggle. So when I think about the risk and the sacrifices, it is a much larger picture than what we're just dealing with right now. So I thank you for your love of those children and what you're willing to do and say, and what you take from the public and from some of us because of the boldness in which you do that.
I am concerned that adult behavior across the country is eliciting a kind of threat and radicalizing of certain groups of people that are a threat and are a danger.
Indian Heritage Month, by also saying that we don't have a pretty history, and I know talking about history has turned into something, because information is not to be told if it makes people feel bad. Suitable for their culture, and we're unable to recreate the food, the medicine, the traditions, and their practices. Forced removal of Native Americans from lands east of the Mississippi to lands west of the Mississippi. The Trail of Tears, where thousands and many, many more American Indians, Native Americans, died in that journey, but were relocated oftentimes to barren land, oftentimes to land that was not suitable for their culture. And so while we're celebrating, we also have to acknowledge why we even have to recognize certain people in the society, because our goal was extermination and the extinction of American Indian people. You know, the whole boarding school plan was to try to kill the savage and save the citizen or the person. And so we just have to be accurate. One of the speakers, just incredible distortion of history tonight, talking about Thomas Jefferson and, all men are created equal. And at the same time, fathered children with a Negro woman that he owned. I mean, I don't know how you make that right. And create a very dangerous society, which I'm afraid we've done. So I hope that we will work together on how we talk about our history in ways that reflect the truth and in ways that don't make anyone feel bad. Most of my conversations have not been about, which option to take, but there's still a large amount of unrest in the nation and in our community. And there are people who've never had the privilege of being able to get the best out of the school district for their children. And whether it's discipline and school resource officers, whether it's the achievement gap, whether it's the overrepresentation in certain areas in special education, those are on people's minds. So the polarity in experiences and worldviews on this board, I think, just leaves me feeling very indifferent today about this conversation. And acknowledge this is a very restrictive position here, and out of a sense of duty and obligation, I'll refrain from saying what's on my heart and mind. County. I also want to say how disappointed I am in a post made by the North Carolina State Superintendent, Catherine Truitt. This is the North Carolina State Superintendent for the North Carolina State Education System. And I know how restrictive it is sitting in this seat, because there are things I would say if I wasn't sitting here, because I'd be an independent board member and not someone responsible for being equitable and fair and not exploiting the seat. And it has been very difficult. I have really not chosen to be here and appreciate everyone's support. But I have expectations that Superintendent Catherine Truitt said today that she will continue to do everything she can to eradicate the teaching of critical race theory, and the North Carolina Republicans are united behind this. And, it's absurd because we haven't even had a discussion, to critically analyze the impact of race in our history. As, the misinformation about just about everything. We heard a mix of it tonight. I just want to say again that critical race theory is an approach. It is not a curriculum. Any educator can deliver instruction in a way that is ineffective, that is the decisions that have been made in this country weren't just decisions made at that time and didn't end there. This came from an essay, from him. This is a quote from him in 1751. Thomas Jefferson said, "I advanced it, therefore, as a suspicion only that the blacks, whether originally a distinct race or made distinct by time or circumstances, are inferior to the whites in the endowments of both body and mind." Abraham Lincoln says, "There is a physical difference between the white and the black races, which I believe will forever forbid the two races living together. While they do remain together, there must be the position of superior and inferior. And I, as much as any man, am in favor of having the superior position assigned to the white race." Now, who labeled who? And who had the legal governmental power to institutionalize that for centuries? It is reckless and ridiculous to suggest that people want to harm white children, to tell them that they're the oppressors. And in the United States, poverty, it was poor white people that were really becoming a problem to the establishment, to the aristocracy, to the ruling class, to the planter class, that it was poor white people. And so poverty was an issue back in the 1600s, 1500s, 1600s. So we had to figure out how we deal with that. And race has been one of the wedges that keep poor white people and poor people of color from coming together. And so race and class are so intertwined. Ira Katznelson, who's the author of the book When Affirmative Action Was White, he talks about the relationship between race and class as a Gordian knot. He said, you can't untie one lace and leave the other one intact. And so that poverty is an issue. Your socioeconomic class and status, impacts your life. And we know that racial inequity exists along all of those socioeconomic on that continuum. So that white kids who are on free and reduced lunch in our schools have better outcomes than their peers who are in the same socioeconomic class as them. We know that there are racial gaps at the high income level. We know there are racial gaps at the professional level. There are racial gaps at the performance level. So ending poverty is important, but racism will just sort of remake it over and over and over again because of a 400-year history where 346 years, not only did your race determine your socioeconomic status then, but it determines your socioeconomic status today.
Trouble, but I said to some of my colleagues recently, so I know that it's an issue, but it seems like every single day on television I'm talking about race, and it's because of the news cycle, it's in the news, but sometimes I get so tired of talking about it. I want to just go, this is over. Can we move on?
And if you talk about it, it exists.
Right.
It's not like it exists and we refuse to talk about it, but making it a bigger issue than it needs to be is the problem we have.
Our equity approach isn't, doing things so that going forward, your outcomes won't be determined by race. Our equity approach includes that and says we must go back and capture the depth of the socioeconomic injury. The depth of the institutional injury has to be brought forward and be a part of that equity effort, or the inequity is so glacial that, again, it will just remake itself again.
So can I go back to, because I thought what you said was fascinating, because you called it bull when you said people can't, pull themselves up. Do you think that race plays a part in wealth distribution, or either a mindset that you can't or
Today?
cannot? Yeah,
No,
you don't.
no, I don't. I don't. You and I, we're proof. Why would race have anything to do with it? Put your mind to what you want to do and go for that. It's kind of like religion to me. It's a good excuse for not getting there.